This is Chuck Wolf, and this is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Now, I know there's a lot of people that got a lot of feelings out there that are pretty upset about a number of things happening in the world today. And yet, at the same time, probably have some things going on in your families, at your workplace, or in your communities where you feel really happy about certain things that are taking place, and maybe even proud of some of your family members or friends who've made some meaningful accomplishments in the last few weeks or days. And you kind of feel mixed up because you want to feel good about the things that are happening maybe where you live and what's going on in your life, but you're not really sure because maybe other people that you know or you care about or just the world in general feels like it's on fire at times. There's so many things going on that are challenging in so many ways. And yet, what's the right way to feel it? How do we feel it? How do we control what's happening emotionally? You know, we're made up of more than 70% water, and it feels like it's swirling inside us. It's like we have white water and waves happening. It's like a hurricane's blowing offshore. And yet we're in our households and maybe we're feeling okay, at least for the moment. Or maybe we're not. But however you're feeling isn't the same necessarily as how you want to feel. And so the show's about helping you understand, how do you feel how you want to feel? What is it that makes you feel like you're okay and you're in control or have some controls? And even if you want to make a difference in the world, are there some things that you can do to help the world, to calm the flames? And I just recently had a friend who called me the other day, and we were talking, and we had a lovely talk. And then she said, one of the things that's happening in her life is that her son, her only son, her firstborn, feels very different politically than she does. And it's a struggle for her to talk with him about that. So what can she do? Is there anything that I might know that would be helpful to her? So I want to talk to you about a few things that will make life better for anybody and everybody. At the same time, if you have a specific concern and you feel like you want to talk to me and call in, I'd like to tell you about the Emotion Roadmap. This is the tool I've created to help people to gain more control over their emotional side of their lives. And if you've got some questions that are challenging you right now, if you've got some decisions to make, some concerns that you have, some issues with family or friends or others where the relationship is broken or at least not good enough, not as good as you want it to be, and you want to know how to make it better and what you might do and how to get some help along those lines. So if you've got something on your mind and you'd like to share it, if you want to talk about some of the concerns you have about what's happening around you, locally, nationally, internationally, anywhere really, in your community, in the clubs you belong to, the teams that you're on, the religious institutions where you go to worship if you believe, if there's any place in your life, inside your family, at your workplace, where something isn't right and you don't feel the way you want to feel about it, give me a call and I'll show you how this works. And when I say how this works, I'm talking about my Emotion Roadmap. In my Emotion Roadmap, there are 4 key questions. The 4 questions start with, how are you feeling? Now, when might you want to ask yourself, how are you feeling? Well, anytime you might feel stuck. Like if you've got a key decision coming up. What do I mean by a key decision? Well, let's say you have a job offer. And the job offer means moving. But it's a great job. It's the job you've dreamed about all your life maybe. And it's for more money and it's going to give you a lifestyle that you don't have right now where you are. But at the same time, you're living really close to family and friends. Your kids are in school and they're happy where they are. Your spouse, your partner really likes this particular area, likes being close to family. That's a tough decision. What do you do? How do you resolve a decision where it seems like it's everything you wanted, and yet on the other part of your life, you have everything you want? But one of the things to consider is, how are you feeling? And how might your spouse feel, your partner? If you have children, how might the children feel? And if it's important to you, how might the family members that you're going to be leaving behind feel? And then if the feelings aren't what you'd hope for or want, is there some way to make that move and still have feelings and relationships in a place where you feel pretty good about them instead of what might likely happen if you don't plan at all what to do around people's feelings before you announce whatever decision you're going to make. Now, by the way, this decision isn't yours alone, right? Because you have a partner that you have to make this decision with. You have a family. You might want to involve your kids in the decision. It's not just your decision alone. But before you talk about it, how do you think everybody's going to feel? How do you want to feel? How do you want them to feel? How do you want to feel? Before you make that call. That's a typical situation that somebody might have that's in a good spot career-wise, at least has good options. At the same time, there are decisions that have to do with familial relationships inside the family. Let's say your relationship with your partner isn't what you would hope it would be at this point in time. Does that mean you dig in harder to make it work, or is it time to think about what comes next? Again, really tough decision. What if your child's not making it in school and you're wondering, do I need to send my child to a different school? To some kind of charter school or private school? Do I need to go up to work with the school teachers and the school administration? Do I need to see about some kind of special needs plan? I know my child may or may not be special needs, but I know there are plans for children who aren't even special needs, and I might be able to get some help that I think my child needs. Or what if I'm in the workplace and I really enjoy my job and I've got a good career and I like the pay that I have and I even like my boss a lot and I feel supported here, but I feel like the people at work, some of them, are just really making life challenging. And I'm wondering, how do I say something without making it worse? How do I get along with my boss if that's not working? Or if I'm leading others and I've got a good team, maybe even a great team, but not everybody's great on it. What do I do about the one or two or more people that are struggling to be part of the team or don't seem to want to cooperate, be collaborative, do what they need to do, and be accountable? So there's all kinds of things that people struggle with in life. And again, if you want to call, I'll give you the number, because if any of those areas in your life are happening, I will walk you through this emotion roadmap, which starts with, how are you feeling? And then I look at, how would you like to feel? What would be ideal to feel for you? How do you get from where you are emotionally to where you want to be? In change management theory, they call that a current state. My current state of my feelings is not what I want. And what I want is this future state that's far more appealing, far more pleasant, far more comfortable, favorable. How do I get from where I am to where I want to go? So that's how it works. Now, I help with all of that. It's not simple to answer these questions, but I like making a difference. I like being helpful. I like creating meaningful outcomes for people. And I'm Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Now, the roadmap, as I mentioned, is getting you from one place to the next place. How do you do that? How do you go from, if you will, from Boston to San Diego? Plane, train, bus, car, how do you do it? Bicycle? If you want to take a trip that's going to take months, you may want to take a bicycle or a motorcycle or however you want to get there. But the idea is, how do you transport yourself from where you are to where you want to be? Emotionally. That's why it's called an emotion roadmap. I have my very good friend Bruce also to thank for that, because when I was creating these questions, I said, what are we going to call it? He said, well, it seems like you're trying to get from one place to another. I said, yeah, that's true. He said, why don't you call it a roadmap? Why don't you call it an emotion roadmap? I said, I love that. So that's what it's been for many, many years now. It starts with, how are you feeling? How do you want to feel? What would be ideal to feel? That's the second question. I know there's a couple questions, but essentially it's, where are you? Where do you want to be emotionally? And then the third question is, how do we get there? How do we get from where you are emotionally to where you want to be emotionally? And the fourth question is, of the things that we talk about after we try to answer question 3, which is how do we get there, I ask you all kinds of questions to see if we can find a way to get you from where you are emotionally to where you want to go emotionally. And in doing that, we create several different scenarios. We talk about lots of ideas about what might work. Start with by asking you, for instance, if you're trying to get from feeling very anxious to confident, I'll ask you, have you ever been anxious before and didn't think you could get to confident and yet you did? And if you have that experience somewhere in your lifetime, might be recent, but it might be a long time ago, doesn't really matter. But if you have in your background the knowledge that you have at one time in your life been anxious and you turned it into confidence, how did you do it? How did that happen? Now, when I say how did that happen, I'm asking you, is there something in your life that you've experienced where you thought that the feelings were similar? Situation might be totally different, but the feelings were similar. You were feeling really anxious and you wanted to feel confident. And I'll ask, since you did it, since you managed to do that at some point in your life, is there anything you might learn from that experience that you could use right here? Think about that. What if you actually had the experience? You didn't remember it till I prompted you the memory with asking you the question. Have you ever been anxious and turned it into confidence? And if you did it, how did you do it? And is there anything you might have gleaned that you can take away and use here? And very often, by the way, there is. And what's beautiful about that is because now we're dealing with you, I'm dealing with you and trying to help you help yourself, knowing that you've already had an experience, not the same circumstances, but an experience with the same feelings that you made work. And then you start thinking about what you did before and seeing how it's going to work here. And as we explore different kinds of ways that you might get from, say, anxious to confident, we explore several of them. And then the last question. Oh, we got a caller.
Hey, Chuck.
Hi, Cole. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. You calling in to see if you can get some help with something?
I was just calling in to respond to your question about turning, I guess, anxiety into, I guess, confidence.
Well, sure. Go ahead. What have you actually done around that issue before, Cole? Have you ever had that experience?
I've had that experience, yeah, a lot at college with a lot of deadlines and projects and all these video projects due at the same time. I also had a presentation, and I was like so stressed about getting everything done and, actually doing a good job, not just kind of handing in like mediocre work. So I turned that anxiety like into a foolproof plan of like what I'm gonna do. Like at 4 o'clock, I'm gonna work on the video. At 5 o'clock, I'm gonna work on the presentation. But I had anxiety, and
So actually, it sounds like you used anxiety kind of like fuel. Like your car is running out
yeah,
of fuel, and anxiety gives you more fuel. It's like kind of an adrenaline rush. Rather than getting overly anxious, because that's where anxiety becomes problematic, is when you feel like you feel paralyzed, so anxious that you can't do anything. But if you use it to program how you're going to respond and create deadlines and timelines and sort of project maps. That seems like what you did to help guide you?
I would say so. Yeah, because honestly, sometimes I would just become really distracted because I feel like my attention span sometimes is really good, and sometimes it's like a goldfish. I forget what I'm doing. So I think having the anxiety of, oh, I gotta get all this done, really fueled that, like, oh, here's my plan to get everything done.
So the idea of using anxiety to program yourself worked in times, and then sometimes you have difficulty maintaining focus and attention.
Yeah, I gotta admit my sin. Sometimes I have very bad attention spans.
How do you get out of that when you find yourself distracted and forgetting what you were doing? What do you do to get yourself back on track?
Well, I gotta be honest. I think that was a result of COVID because I kind of spent, a lot of us spent time indoors, and I would spend time on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I would watch these videos that are like 30 to a minute long instead of like actually good length content, and my kind of attention span just got shot because I'd be like, all right, if something isn't moving every minute, I don't care.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've been, one of the things that I do is I do put up videos that are long, deep dives, really. And a lot of people find that if it's more than 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, or even 1 minute sometimes, I've lost you, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem with our generation. And thankfully, with the career path I went down, I was able to fix myself because obviously I'm sitting here editing 40 to an hour long video. So I had to smack myself in the head and say, get out of that like mind frame.
So you did some kind of an alert signal to go off in your head, and recognize that, oh, wait, I've got to do something different here. I can't just keep watching 1 minute videos.
Yeah, 100%. Because I remember during COVID, there's all these good movies that were coming out on HBO Max. I think there was The Matrix 4. It wasn't a good movie, I have to admit, but I remember I just couldn't even sit down and watch it because I was like, there isn't something going on every minute. Like my brain was rotted.
I wonder if how many other people are dealing with that. I mean, at your age group, Cole, are there a lot of people that that are still struggling with this?
Honestly, I think that is a trend for younger, I want to say the younger generations, that they don't care as much for kind of the long form content. They kind of want just shorts. I think that's why Instagram, Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts have all kind of blown up.
Considering that you've been able to turn that around for yourself, and any thoughts that you might share with others who might be struggling with this as well?
I would say just get off social media. That's my bet. I mean, just I don't know. It's like an addiction. I hate to say it. Like a lot of people are probably addicted to social media, just kind of sitting in bed, scrolling through Instagram Reels, thinking like, oh, it's just a minute. Time won't fly by. And by the time you watch like 50, 30-second videos, time has just flown by. And you don't realize it because you're just on your phone scrolling. So I guess the best advice is just don't use it as much, set timers, set restrictions on yourself, because just the further you go down that rabbit hole of watching Instagram or TikTok, it's just going to get worse to get out of.
So you make an interesting point, and in part you related it to COVID, and a lot of people during that time frame had a lot of time on their hands because people were commuting and they were home a lot, and even if you were working, you still seemed like you had more time than you did when you were commuting. So there was a lot of what you said happened, I think, and a lot of people did. Their attention spans, they get shortened by the very things you described, Cole. I think you're right on track. But I want to make the point that it didn't just happen to people who are younger, because I know myself, I'll find myself looking at reels that are really short too. And I think one of the things that I found is helpful is to limit. And you talked about setting boundaries, and boundaries are really important in life, I think. One of the ways, by the way, if those of you who might be listening to this, is just to kind of track and see how you're doing with this. If you don't really have a strategy yet, and you're kind of focused on trying to figure out how to deal with this yourself, I have found one of the ways in teaching people how to be more aware, how to answer the question, "How am I feeling?" is that if you choose to really want to learn more about how you're feeling during the course of the day. And it's not just a fleeting thought, but you actually want to do something about it. Here's an exercise you can try over the course of the next week or two. It's probably better 2 weeks, but even 1 week you'll learn a lot. Take some time during the day, and I suggest 3 times a day, to ask yourself the question, how am I feeling, and is it how I want to feel? And what I mean by that is that most of us start our day with an idea about what we think we're going to get done. And when we are thinking about what we want to get done, we start off with some good intentions and maybe a list, and we start knocking off that list. But then the distraction happens. Something, I click on a blank screen, and what pops up is a whole bunch of information, obviously things that I'm somewhat interested in because the algorithms catch what we like, anything we might have checked into before. And so I'll click on something, and then all of a sudden, well, I call it a rabbit hole. I go down this rabbit hole, and I'm in it for a while, and then I realize that what I had said I was going to get done isn't happening, so I try to scramble back. But one of the things I suggest that people do, just to see if this is happening to you, and you may already know it, but is that 3 times a day, once in the morning, say mid-morning for you. For most people, that's around 10 o'clock or maybe even 10:30. But say around 10 o'clock or 10:15, stop and ask yourself daily and write it down. How am I feeling And is it how I want to feel? Because by lunchtime, my guess is if you want to get done what you thought you were going to get done by the day, by 10:15, you'll know if you're on the right track. When you ask yourself that, chances are you may have gone down a rabbit hole or two yourself and be off track. And yet you're able to get back on track by stopping and asking yourself, how am I feeling? And is it how I want to feel? And if I want to feel like I'm back on track, then I got to stop what I'm doing and get right back to that list that I have. And then the same thing around 2:30, mid-afternoon, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's 3 o'clock. But whatever it is, same question, because now you got a couple hours left in the day. And if you really want to get certain things done by the day, you might already be too late, but at least you got a couple hours to at least make some headway on what those things were that you said at the beginning of the day you wanted to get done. And again, ask yourself, how am I feeling, and is it how I want to feel? And then start getting back on track. And then finally, the last time to ask yourself, and again, you know, most people are carrying around smartphones these days, so you can set alarms to make sure you don't miss these things. And then on the last part of the day, around 7:30, when you're home, and in theory at least, you're with your family or your friends or whoever it is that's home with you. Maybe it's even just alone that you're on your own personal time. Ask yourself, how am I feeling, and is it how I want to feel? And am I really present? Am I really feeling like I'm at home, or is my head still at work some? And I think what you'll learn over the course of doing this 2 weeks, but 1 week at least, is that I'm not really doing what I could be doing. And I think this would help with this idea of short attention spans. I think this will help you get away from the few things that grab your attention and take you down that road where you're looking at one after another, minute-long, 2-minute-long videos. And I think that might be helpful to everyone that's listening as a strategy to try and get your attention span back focused on what you need to be doing, so you feel like at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, you really accomplished most of what you set out to do.
That sounds like a great idea.
Okay, well, then, let me know how you do next time we talk. Paul, it was good to talk to you. Thanks for talking with me today.
It was very nice. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. So if you're thinking about doing something that helps you to get past short attention spans or just helps you to deal with tough issues, the issues that I think that people can relate to are situations involving elder care. One of the projects I'm working on is going to see about getting grant money to look into the field of essential tremor. Because it's something that's in my family, I wanted to see about doing something to help caretakers and people who feel the need to be cared for all deal with the emotional side of what happens when a progressive disease enters your family or your household. Or maybe you're a caregiver yourself. Maybe it's what you do for a living. Or maybe you've hired caregivers to help out with family or friends or people that you're helping to care for. So what's the relationship like with caregivers? How do you hold people accountable? How do you screen? How do you recruit? How do you make sure you've got the right person with the right competencies, with the right kind of personality for the member that you're going to need help with, for the family member or the friend that you're going to need help with? How do you recruit for that? How do you decide what you're looking for? How do you cope with it when it's happening to you and you're the one needing care? Again, challenging emotions everywhere. One of the reasons I got involved with the political side of things is because we've become so polarized in recent years. And so let me say a little bit about that, because I know there's a lot going on in the country right now that people feel very strongly about. There's some people very happy with certain things that are happening in the country, and a lot of people are very upset about things that are happening in the country. So whatever side you're on, if you have a family member that's on the other side, chances are you have a real hard time talking with each other about this. And you aren't alone, and you probably know that already. But in case you don't, there's quite a few people that are having similar problems. There's a huge divide. And, you know, some people talk about it's the middle of the country versus the two coasts. But that's not completely true. There's people inside every family that have different beliefs. And I personally think that loving family members supersedes any political feelings you might have or I might have about what they believe that's different than what I believe. But I have to work at it, and if they don't like what I believe, they have to work at it with me. So how dedicated are you to your family members and making sure that the love we have for one another supersedes any bad feelings we might have about beliefs that we find are very different? And I do recommend and I'm going to have some of these people on on this show in the coming months. There's a group called Braver Angels. And Braver Angels was started initially by a person who was a marital therapist. And he was used to people having love for one another, at least at one time, but then having major disagreements with one another to the point of going to marital therapy in hopes of not having to dissolve their marriages. And he had found a number of techniques that really helped him to get people to recognize, while they might not agree with another person, might disagree vehemently with another person, if they loved that other person, they could at least seek to understand why the other person believed what they did, felt what they did, cared about what they did, and still potentially, not always, but potentially keep the relationship intact and have the love override any of the beliefs or differences of opinion that people might have. So that's another thing to think about is, how do we override biases? I'm convinced that all of us are born with biases to start out with life. When we're first raised, our families, they tell us who we are, whatever group that might have raised us. If we were lucky enough to be raised by two loving parents, wonderful, but many people aren't. Many people are raised by one parent or a grandparent, or perhaps they've been in an orphanage or in the foster homes or had the state take care of them. Whatever way you were raised, you got certain instincts and certain experiences that combined to create what you believe about life and about people and about others who are different than you. And those beliefs sometimes become biases. Let me take one political situation that is troubling to me. The situation involves a group of people called Somalis, right? The Somalis that have committed fraud in Minneapolis, it seems like there's a number of them, don't represent every Somali that was ever born. I mean, I hate the idea of targeting a group because somebody in a group committed a crime that everybody in that group is suspicious. There's a lot of white people that have committed crimes. And so are all white people suspicious? Or whatever race, or whatever group, whatever ethnicity. I hate the idea of the other simply being a category where they're less than whatever group you might belong to or I might belong to. So I think there's all kinds of biases that exist that we need to somehow find ways to get past. And understand that we all have them and be forgiving of ourselves for having them. But having forgiven ourselves doesn't mean that we don't work to change those biases, to be more welcoming and to be more inclusive. Whether it's somebody's political beliefs, whether it's a group that somehow is being diminished by others, how about rising up above that and being the best version of ourselves? Being responsible, being caring, being loving. Being someone that fights for what's right. Now, you don't have to necessarily be on the international, national, or even local stage to make life better for people. You can start simply just being kind to those you encounter, whether it's in your family, your friends, your neighbors, your community, wherever you show up. Kindness is a way of making the world a better place. Recognizing when our beliefs put us against other people and trying to change those beliefs. Being kind to ourselves, loving to ourselves, and recognizing we're not perfect, we're not going to ever be perfect, but we can strive for perfection. Knowing we'll never get there, but knowing every step we take towards it makes us better. And in making ourselves and others that we interact with better through kindness, through acts of charity, by being more loving and less hateful, we make the world a better place. I'm Chuck Wolf. You're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. The Emotion Roadmap is this tool that I created many years ago now, over 25 years ago, when I embraced and entered the field of emotional intelligence and became one of the pioneers who specializes in applying what we know about emotional intelligence to make life better for ourselves, for our friends, for our family. And in my case, I'm trying to make it better for everybody that is listening to these videos, whether you listen live or you listen later. I hope that you're getting from this concept, this idea that you can change what you feel, and that in doing so, you can make life better for you, and you can help others make life better for them by helping them change how they feel. You start with knowing, how are you feeling? How do you feel? And then asking, when the stakes are high and it's important and you somehow feel like the feelings you're having are off somehow, they're not the feelings you need for what you're trying to get done, you ask yourself, how do I want to feel? What would really be ideal for me to feel? And then, how do I get there? How do I get from what I am feeling to what would be ideal to feel? And then after discussing a few strategies with me, if you call, we pick one. And by what I mean by pick one, we talk about, is there one of the strategies we talked about for getting you from whatever you're feeling to what you'd like to feel? Let's say you've been betrayed by someone, and yet you don't want to give up on them. You want to trust them again. That's a really long emotional journey. The longest one we might take ever, by the way, is to get from feeling betrayed to trusting again. But it's possible. Not for everybody, by the way, but it's possible for most of us. Well, how do you get there? And as we talk about things that would work or potentially could work, I ask you, of all the things we're talking about, which one or two are you really able to do? And which one or two are you really willing to do? As curious as it might seem, when you're able and you've got a strategy that can help you, this tremendous challenge to get from feeling betrayed to feeling trusting again, and you got something that could potentially work, and yet you're unwilling to try it, it's not going to be a good plan. You need to have something that you feel like you're excited even to try, or at least willing to try. Because without that commitment, the chance of it working is slim to none. So that's my show. Again, I'm Chuck Wolf. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm usually on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something. If you feel like you watched this and you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Make a comment or two about things that you like, things that you might like to want to hear about. I'd love to hear from you. And please do that on my YouTube page, CJ Wolf 5. If you are not listening on that page, you can go to that now and leave a comment or two. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here with you. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm Chuck Wolf, and I want to thank Simsbury Media